power and glory. I really can't say enough good things about power and glory. To me, this is the height of modding in sim racing and is one of the best things I think that's ever come out for any sim racing game that's ever existed. It's pretty high praise, and from somebody that really loves classic racing, vintage racing, obviously this would be top of the list for me. But if vintage racing isn't one of your things and you somehow found your way to my YouTube channel, I highly recommend checking out Power and Glory, and hopefully in this short video I can show you why. Power and Glory is a mod, but it really deserves all the attention and credit for being much more than a mod. It's really a full game. It was built upon Simbin's GTR2 by a modding team called the GT Legends Workshop, and its first version was released in 2007, and it was always planned to be released in multiple versions. Version 2 following up in 2008, and then finally version 3 initially released in 2012, some 10 years ago at this point. We're on version 3.2 here today, which is the most recent release as far as I can tell, and contains all the content that was built upon in those years. The GT Legends Workshop was a big group of modders, and their goal with Power and Glory was to create authentic 1960s and 1970s GT sports car touring car racing. So the story goes, when GT Legends was released by Simbin in 2005, everybody was very excited for this touring car game, and when it came out, it was a great game. I've already taken a look at GT Legends, but it does simulate modern historic cars for various reasons, none of which are fully known. Simbin modeled the modern FIA Historic Championships with GT Legends, which are modern championships run with the older cars from the 60s and 70s, and those cars have actually changed quite a bit from when they were initially run. Many of them have additional roll cages for safety, their engines may be slightly detuned, but the biggest change, more than anything, are the tires that are used in modern historic racing. So although GT Legends was a well-reviewed sim and enjoyed by many to this day, the GT Legends Workshop team decided they would use that as a base and restore the cars to how they were in the 1960s and 70s, and they achieved that and so much more with Power and Glory. So this is the main menu in Power and Glory, and installing Power and Glory is pretty easy as far as mods go. You need GTR2, which you can get from Steam these days, and you no longer need GT Legends. You used to need that with the older versions of Power and Glory, but you download Power and Glory, you download GTR2. It's best to make a fresh copy of GTR2. I just copied my install from Steam to a new directory and then installed Power and Glory on top of it to show it to you today. And we're going to be looking at 100% stock, or more or less stock, Power and Glory. I've also added a ton of other mods to the other versions I'm using for some of my 1966 videos, but this is really what comes with Power and Glory itself. And as you can see from the main menu, it's basically a completely different game. They've reskinned everything and added so many cool details. I want to go through some of those here. So I'll jump into the practice menu here so we can get a look at some of the content in cars. When you install Power and Glory, you can choose whether or not you want to wipe out all the GTR2 content and just have Power and Glory, or if you want both of them. I recommend making a separate install for Power and Glory specifically, because there's a lot of different things about it. So in the Power and Glory filter list, we have all the different 1960s classes of cars, everything from touring cars to grand touring cars, sports cars, all the way up through prototypes, and there's some prototypes included by default. Then we get into the 1970s cars with touring cars and grand touring cars. You also have an IROC, International Race of Champions car set thrown in. Every way you could imagine through all the different class menus to slice and dice and race against exactly what you want to race against. We'll take a look to start at the 1960s touring cars just to get a feel for this. Looking at a Ford Cortina here. This is a great little list of cars itself. We have an Alfa Romeos, Ford Mustang, Trans Ams, as well as the BSCC versions of it. 3 different Jaguars, an MK1 and 2 MK2s, Lotus Cortina, Mini Coopers. These are all cars that would fit roughly together to race against, but you can see there's a lot of different models, and so it's not only the cars from GTL or GT Legends that were brought and updated for this. It's a lot of extra cars as well. You'll notice that sprinkled throughout, cars that never made an appearance in GT Legends. The best thing of all is all of the cars, no matter if they were from GT Legends originally or they're separate mods that somebody made, they've all been completely overhauled and brought to the very top quality that you'd see for any mods in GTR2. So clicking through the cars and seeing what's on offer is fun enough. We can jump into the showroom. It's fun to take a look a little closer at all the detail of the cars, but I'll turn your attention for the history and specs toggle at the bottom of the screen. And for every single car that's included in Power and Glory, you of course have the specs information, all the different engines and transmissions, power curves, and everything you'd want to know about that side of things. But they've also gone ahead and included a complete history of every car, and that's based off the car model. So in this case, the Mini Cooper 1275S, but it's also down to the individual paint scheme that's run on the car. And you can see here at the bottom paragraph, we have information on the number 22 Broadspeed Mini Cooper, driven by John Fitzpatrick at Silverstone in the 1965 British Saloon Car Championship. And as you go through every single paint scheme and car that's available in Power and Glory, you'll get completely different details about that car, where it ran, who drove it, and it adds so much to the sim and shows you how much the whole team cared to research and show off all of this. It's not simply a group of cars slapped together. It is absolute care in every single aspect. And for somebody that likes racing history, and I assume a lot of you watching do, this is really the good stuff. It's worth the price of admission alone. So the 1960s touring cars are fun to start out in. When you move up to the Grand Touring class, I'll check off a couple of those, get a totally different set of cars, and it's actually really fun to move through the progression of all the different car classes that exist within Power and Glory. But we have the Alpines, beautiful cars, known for rallying, obviously, but did race in road racing. Austin Healey's. We have a whole host of Corvettes, a bunch of different models from coupes and roadsters with different engine combinations, many different paint schemes and things to pick from. Some of these only existed in one or two cars actually racing on the track like that, all the way up to the Stingrays themselves. A couple Ferraris included. These were not included in GT Legends as far as I know, so fun to have some Ferraris since they were so prolific during the 1960s and 70s sports car racing. Jaguar, of course, Lotus. I think the 7 Series here is actually a newer car for the version 3 release of Power and Glory as well. A bunch of different Cobras, Shelby GTs, and Triumphs. A lot of fun clicking through all these different cars, and of course, if we go to the showroom, we can take a look at all the details about the car. You can learn so much from this, and it's one of the things, getting a cup of coffee in the morning, just coming through and clicking through the cars, learning a whole bunch about motorsports, and then if you really like the story one of these has, you can go out and drive it. So moving on through the 60s, you get to some of the really fast cars with the sports cars themselves. If we jump into these classes, start getting into the Porsche prototypes, the 906, we've got the 427 Shelby Cobra, a Mini Cooper, which is interesting, but I think that's one of the higher powered ones. GT40s, of course, a car loved by many. The 1966 version, this is the Mark I GT40, an awesome car to experience if you want to relive Ford versus Ferrari a little bit. Get the Ford Escort as well, and you can tell the cars are starting to get bigger tires. They got bumped out fenders, and so it's neat to compare all the different versions of some of the cars that exist throughout the different sets as well, and how technology progressed all the way through the 60s and into the 70s. We'll take a quick glimpse at the prototypes themselves, jump into the models. There's not too many straight prototypes in this. You do have the Ford GT40 Mark II, which is the one I'm racing in my 1966 season right now, and you do have the 906 as well, but you'll notice the Ferraris, Matras, Lolas, they're not here. It was one of the things originally when this mod first came out I was a little disappointed in, wanting to recreate Le Mans, really all I knew at the time about sports car racing in this era. But this really is a sim grounded in GT touring car sports car racing, and so there are some additional packs and things available now which add those cars in, but I honestly urge you to enjoy the stock content to start, and you can always add some more cars later. Plenty of things exist out there. If we look then at the 1970s cars, these are some of the most fun in my opinion, and really ones that I would encourage everybody trying, although the 1960s stuff is great too. But these are high-powered, short wheelbase, huge tires, really drifting all the time type of cars. And you have the Alfa Romeo, the BMW CSL with the extra aero bodywork on it. These cars are a ton of fun to drive and are always sideways through corners. We've got some more Corvettes. This is obviously the Corvette that was just added to AMS2. We've got De Tomaso, the Ford Capri, which is a great car as well. We'll come down, have the Porsche 911 RSRs, RSR 3.0. So a lot of great cars. This is a great set to race with overall, and shows you how complete and well done Power and Glory is as a mod. And lastly, you do have the IROC set, which is a set of Porsche RSRs. And for the first season or so of IROC, they ran Porsche 911 RSRs, which is a really cool car. Very, very different from what they ended up running, but a whole set of paint schemes for the 1974 IROC season. So you can go throw these around Riverside International Raceway and recreate yourself an awesome IROC race. So I'm going to go back to the 70s touring and grand touring cars to do some racing with today. I've been racing the 60s cars a lot in some of the other videos I'm doing. And for a car to race, I've been playing a lot with different cars in the set, but I thought I'd go with the Ford Capri since it is on the cover, so to say, of Power and Glory and is an awesome car that I don't see in a lot of videos. So we'll go do some racing in this Ford Capri RS 3100. The car itself has a 3.4 liter V6 producing 444 horsepower, a fun number, at about 9,000 RPMs max rev. The car is only 1,100 pounds, so it's an extremely light car. It's really wide. It has a short wheelbase, pretty much exemplifies everything that you'd want to drive in a 1970s sports car. And now over to circuits. Circuits are one of the very, very minor criticisms of Power and Glory in that it does not include any brand new circuits. All of the tracks that are included with Power and Glory by default are all of the stock GTR2 tracks. They actually do include new settings and files for all of the stock GTR2 tracks so that they look actually a little bit better and they perform better with these cars in the AI. But as for brand new tracks or vintage tracks, it does not include any. There is a massive library of tracks that exist for GTR2, and you can find most tracks that you'd ever want to race on. A lot of them are over at Race Department now, and there's a few other sites floating around out there. Unfortunately, we lost the big repository at No Grip, which existed for so long, but you can find endless vintage tracks to go race on. I think these cars are just as fun at the stock tracks as well, and these tracks are so well made for GTR2, especially with the add-ins that were included with Power and Glory, that they're definitely not to be overlooked. I know a lot of folks just clear these out and install vintage tracks in, which I myself have done as well, but these are a lot of fun to race around, almost like you're racing a modern historic championship, but one that doesn't have any of the safety rules and allows the cars to be exactly as they were back in the day. So I do want to do a race today, and I figured we'd go to the best track, in my opinion, that's available with GTR2, Anderstorp in Sweden. I bet some of you thought I was going to pick Spa, and I love Spa. I actually really love the 2003 version of Spa with the old bus stop that's included, but Anderstorp absolutely has my heart. If this isn't a track that you know, because I know it's not been included with a lot of different games, I highly recommend checking out Anderstorp. Of course, famous for holding the Swedish Grand Prix in the 1970s, very much at the height of Ronnie Peterson's fame, and unfortunately really went away from international competition with the death of Ronnie Peterson. But for a while, this was an amazing track to race at. It saw the first win of the six-wheeled Tyrrell car. It saw the fan car race at it. A lot of memorable races. It's a really, really great track and one that has an amazing flow. The layout of it is almost unchanged from how it was back in the 70s, even with this mid-2000s version that's ships with GTR2. So it's an awesome track. No chicanes, no slow points. Perfect for these vintage cars. So before I go out and qualify, I just wanted to show you a little bit around the garage screen because all of that has been redone as well. Of course, you can see here it's been reskinned. Looks really nice for GTR2. If we jump into the garage, though, and take a look at the setup, the setups themselves are a big part of GTR2, a big part of Power and Glory. A lot of fun to be had fooling around with different settings in here and seeing what they do with the cars. They drive completely differently from anything that you would race in GTR2 itself, and so you really have to come to grips literally with how the cars work. But one thing I wanted to point out specifically in this page is the tires guide. So if I click on that, this tires guide is something they put a lot of time into with Power and Glory, and is one of the main features. I said at the very beginning, the tires on the modern vintage cars are really one of the big separators between what those cars are like now versus what they were like back in the day. And so extra care and thought and a lot of documentation was put into recreating the different types of tires and compounds that were available in the 1960s and 70s. And as you can see here, this is a chart outlining tires from 1960 through 1972 and allow you to equate the tires that you have on the car against everything else to see kind of where they stack up. And it's so detailed. I'm running some Dunlop bias ply soft tires here, and you can see those next to the 1972. They're going to be some of the most sticky tires, or the softest tires outside of these R7 white tires that exist. You can click through and see the next step of tires as well. It educates you a little bit about the different compounds that exist, and ultimately on the tires info, it talks to you about how to actually run with the tires in Power and Glory, talking about consistent lap times. It takes a few laps to actually get the tires up to temperature, reading the temperatures, making adjustments. Very cool stuff. Just so much thought put into it. And I know there were so many different folks involved with setting up Power and Glory and getting all this to work correctly. You can definitely notice as you're driving just how great it is. So I'm going to go out and do a quick qualifying just to get in front of the really slow cars, and then we'll line up for a race. All right, here on I think what's called the back straightaway at Anderstorp, 25-minute race. I believe I'm in P13, lucky number 13, but see how far I can get up. I should be able to pass a few cars. I've been doing races at this track all week, and it's been a ton of fun, maybe a little too much fun. This is such a good pairing for these cars, and the mix of cars too is quite fun because they're all a little bit different. We're coming towards the carousel here, second to last corner. Every good track has to have a carousel. Long right-hander with a ton of camber. You'll notice that if you've never seen this track before, that many of the corners have camber, which is a lot of fun. But this one flattens out towards the exit, so easy to slide a bit wide, and then we come right up to a 90-degree left-hander that gets us on the front straightaway. Everybody slams on their brakes. Hopefully we'll get the green flag when we're on the front straightaway. Come around the final corner here. There we go, on the front straight, green flag right as I round the corner. Behind this Corvette in front, I think I got passed by a bunch of cars on the inside, but come start our 25-minute race into the first corner. On the inside, third gear. Oh, the Corvette slides out wide a little bit. See if I can get under him as we'll exit onto a straightaway. Oh, the sound of that engine to my left. But this is called the Flight Straight. Aptly named because it's literally a runway. The Corvette just flies ahead. Such a fast car. We'll come down, though, to the end of the straightaway. This is a corner called Nora. I think that little Escort's going to try to flap the inside. Oh, the Corvette losing everything there in the inside. It's a little adventurous for a first lap. A little too excited there off the start, buddy. Then we'll come through another right-hander and onto a little straightaway. I got cold tires, a lot of fuel at the start of the race, so things take a little bit to get going. We'll come to the end of the straightaway into what's called the Grand Prix curve, I believe. Long right-hander, but a lot of camber to help the car out. We'll get up the inside of this RSR and head towards the Opel corner. Similar, but to the left. Want to enter quite high and take a low apex on the exit. Slide out a little too far wide this De Tomaso. Oh, in front of me, I got that RSR to my left. Everybody trying to get going on the opening lap. We'll come down the straightaway towards a corner called Hansen. Make the swap with that RSR behind me. Second gear on the inside. Try not to slam into the De Tomaso. He gives me the position. Thankfully, just fly away from him and come up to the carousel again. Long right-hander. Just wait for it. You don't want to overuse the tires or go into a total drift mode. Then down a second gear for the final corner. Turn it on in. Try to get on that accelerator to get the car turned and come complete the first lap. So a little bit happening on that lap up to P10. So I passed a couple cars at least, despite being overtaken on the start. We'll send it out for the flight corner again. You can see the car sliding mid-corner. It's all about that four-wheel drift in these cars. The bias ply tires absolutely are where it's at. You can see why folks wanted to recreate the real historical racing with the right tires, because it makes so much of a difference. Come down to Nora again, a little less dramatic this time. It's a hard corner. I think that's the only corner on the track that's been changed really at all since this track was first built in 1968. It is tightened up a bit. It used to be a bit faster, but otherwise the track is pretty much exactly as it was back in the day, especially when Formula One ran there. I've seen some online or onboard videos online of some of the races, and the track very much the same as this. Come up to Opel. We got a nice string of cars in front. I think a couple of leaders, likely some of the other Capris and BMW CSLs launching ahead. We'll try to get by as many as I can. Wait for our turn here down to Hansen. One of the brightly colored Kramer Porsches in front. We'll try to stick it up the inside into Carousel. Should have the better line through here. It's a weird corner because you don't want to go to the left or fade out to the left as you normally would coming out of it, because you have this right-hander right afterwards. Take it a little wide. I got that Porsche on the inside. I got another one right in front. Fly past him. All of the paint schemes in this mod are so awesome. Cars are all very brightly colored and lots of cool sponsors. Of course, no copyright or anything to worry about. Is back end just a little bit there, but fly past the Jägermeister BMW in front up to 5th gear. I think the 70s had some of the best paint schemes in motor racing. Blocking the inside line a bit, make sure that CSL doesn't launch it up there again. And I think this straightaway here also used to be the front straight of the track back, I think in the 70s maybe, but you can see a little road joining right there to the right. That's the old pit lane, I believe. But since relocated to the place it is in this version of the circuit, and this is a 2005 version of the circuit, believe it or not. It looks very much like the 70s, despite the Eurosport banner there, but this track really hasn't changed much at all. And you have to thank, I guess, the fact that F1 did leave the track for there not being any chicanes or anything on it these days. It's a 4th gear, relatively untouched, natural circuit. It's why maybe I always liked this one in GT Legends and in GTR2. Feels like a retro track because it is a retro track. Slide it through the long right-hander. So I got a little bit of a gap to the cars in front. Tires are starting to feel good now. I've got the medium compound on for the race, so hopefully it will last and be just fine throughout the duration. Got another CSL in front of me. Up to P6, so very close to a top 5. We should catch, I think, some lap traffic right towards the end of the race, but won't be a ton of it. All of the cars, although there's some that are a little bit slower, they're not super far off the pace, so should be a good race. But this mod is great. You can mix and match really any of the cars that you want. This is pretty much all the 70s cars, which are some of my most favorite to drive. But if you wanted to throw the 60s cars in the race, or you want to go to Spa-Francorchamps and have a big historic car festival and run 60 random cars from the mod, you can absolutely do that. It's kind of fun just to race around the track in practice and just see all the other cars around, because there's so many. Closed right up on the CSL in front, but I've got one right behind me as well. Fade out wide through Opel. The CSL behind me is going to try to look to the low side. Oh, he's in there. Trying to accelerate out, but I think he might have a better line coming up to Hansen. To outbrake myself. Rear end the car in front. Oh, right up to the curb, jumped it, but kept it mostly on the track. Sliding coming into the carousel. It's really easy to overslide the tires. You can heat them up way too much, and then they have almost no grip, so you want to be careful with the sliding. You don't want to go into full drift mode if you can avoid it. Cut the corner there on the last turn just to help get the car turned, come across the line, end another lap. Only about 5 minutes into this one, so plenty of racing left. GTR2 and Power and Glory specifically here, one of those sims where I can just do super long races in it, and it's awesome that the sim itself supports the endurance racing. Moving to GTR2 over this just being a GTL mod is such a great thing, just because of the features that are in GTR2 around endurance racing. You've got the full day-to-night transitions. You've got pit swaps with driver swaps and everything. You've got full rain and changing weather throughout a race. So the sim itself is very complete. And so having these cars moved basically from GT Legends and that whole sim environment, which is quite a bit older of the whole G-motor engine and everything that Simbin was using, to this newer version of it, even though it's still a very old game at this point, just allows it to use all the best features, and it's such a nice pairing. Get up the gears. Something else about this mod too is the sounds. I'll just do a few corners here without talking so you can listen to it. So making the pass there on that BMW, the sounds in this mod are so good. If you go back and listen to the stock GTR2 sounds, which I know a lot of folks use some of the updates now, so the difference maybe isn't that apparent, but compared to the stock GTR2 sounds, which in my book are not bad at all, these are just another level, and they honestly rival, in my opinion, some of the newer sim sounds. The sounds of the engine, obviously, but the tires against the road surface and the gravel and things being kicked up and hitting the car. It's just all very much there. You've got some good ambient sounds as well. Ugh, the BMW got awful close behind me. So it's all working very well. As with the rest of the mod, there's recommended sound settings, and they actually integrated it into the UI. So when you go in the options page for the sounds, you see exactly where they recommend you set them to, and you can, of course, change it if you want. But I've got them set up how they recommend them. And they sound very, very good to me. Long right-hander. Got that BMW right behind, although I blew by him on the straightaway. Oh, we're going to go a bit deep into the final corner, down to first gear. Try to pick it back up. There we go. So I should be in the top 5 now. P5. Should have about, I imagine 15 minutes left. I got none of the HUD on. This is how I love to race. It's so immersive. Just have that pit board as you go by. The time left in the race doesn't really matter. You just go as fast as you can the whole time. And if I'm doing an endurance race, when I come into pit, I'll check the clock, check the leaderboard or something. But other than that, no need for that. Real drivers didn't have it. I don't either, as I'm all mixed up in Nora there. All right, sliding around right on the curbs. Hopefully I can get away from these two behind me and focus forward. I can see the next car up there. Hopefully I can catch them. Maybe we'll start getting some lap traffic in a few laps. So talking about the controls and how this feels and everything, again, I think it feels really good. GTR2 has held up remarkably well. Just watching that rear view mirror. GTR2 has held up remarkably well in the handling department. There's a lot of folks revisiting it now. And with some of the newer mods too, or updates for it, folks have made, make it work a little bit better with wheels and pedals and all that. Power and Glory came with some settings and everything for force feedback, which greatly improve how it feels. You can use any degrees of rotation you want on a wheel and change the different steering locks. Oh, so slow through the final corner there. Tires have heated up sufficiently, and we're now sliding, maybe more than cornering. See if I can hold off these guys behind. Got around them, but now I can't get away from them. There we go, pull it onto the flight straight. But I've got my CSL wheel in this. I'm using my H-pattern shifter. Everything feels great. You feel a lot of road detail. And yeah, I really am not missing much from the force feedback department at all. Graphics-wise, we'll talk about that. Obviously, this is a pretty old game, being from 2005 originally, 2006 really. And, for a game from that time, obviously it looks very, very good. I've always really liked the graphics for GTR2. I think they're a nice simplicity, cleanness. I don't know the best way to describe it. There's not a lot of weird effects and things going on that try to distract your eye, and maybe it doesn't look, or I know it doesn't look as good as Automobilista 2 or even Assetto Corsa or obviously ACC and things, but it's very clean, easy to see what you're doing, and enough for me at least to get lost in. As somebody who routinely stares at old DOS games for hours on end, maybe I don't have the right opinion of it, but really see nothing wrong in the visual department with this. Maybe the lighting could be better, maybe the textures could be higher resolution, but it's all working together quite well, and it's very cohesive visually. Now, this is one of the stock tracks, and looks pretty good. And of course, there's some of the add-on tracks out there and mods that are all over the board with how good they are. But if you stick to the stock tracks, if you stick to some of the really well-made third-party tracks like Virtual Le Mans, there's a few others out there, you can have a really good time with eye candy as well as racing in general. And you saw off the start there, the AI were kind of unpredictable, and it's fun like that. I found, in these cars, they're all quite similar in speed if you're sticking within class, so they're not, running in the back of each other as much and anything as it really mess up Nora that time. Catching a car, but it might be a slower car. Looks like a BMW, though. But the AI are some of the best. I really don't feel like AI have improved that much in any sim since GTR2, really. Especially in ways where they'll have mechanical failures or they'll have an accident. The AI are programmed to do that in GTR2, so it keeps it interesting. You can be racing for 10 hours, literally 10 hours if you wanted to, or 24 hours if you wanted to, and the leading AI, the leading driver who's super fast could have a mechanical failure or they could crash, ruin their race, so you always want to get to the finish. It's coming up really quick on this CSL. I don't know if he was actually in front of me. We'll try to get by him here coming into the carousel on the inside. I'll have to see when I come to the line if I get the position or not. Slow it down for the final corner. I've been overdoing it too much in there. Come to the line. Up to P4, so that was for position. So you do see that too. Some of the AI, they'll be quick for a while and then they'll slow down. Maybe something's wrong with the car. Maybe they got tired. Stuff like that you don't see in a lot of newer sims with AI. So it's all working well. Everything about this is working well, and it's so much fun. It's out of third gear into Nora again. You can, of course, do things like speed up the fuel and tire wear, change the day to night so that it goes quicker. I'm just running in real time and regular burn wear and everything here, but you can customize a lot what you want the sim to do for you. You can get really into the files and things if you want, to editing, how everything works. It's all accessible to you. And of course, and probably what a lot of folks like to do, is race this online. And there are still communities out there. I'll probably butcher the name, but the Festbierbude is a community online that races exclusively Power and Glory mod. They have a whole website and everything. It's heavily in German. They've got some English material to help get English-speaking folks oriented, but it seems like a great time, and if you want to race this online with folks, why wouldn't you? Then you can absolutely do that there, or if you want to keep racing it offline because the AI is so good and you can do a race anytime against any cars on any track, then you can go ahead and do that. We're catching a couple of these Alfa Romeos. Oh, we're going to give them a little punt there. Get out of my way. Almost losing the rear end of the car. Come across the line. Still in P4. Maybe lost a headlight there. Getting into the last 10 minutes of this race. Flat out in fifth gear. Oh, into Nora, a bit deep. Tires are already getting pretty worn. I'm sliding them around quite a bit. There we go, a little more controlled of a corner. You can definitely feel the difference between pushing the car and trying to go fast versus, backing off just a little bit and riding around. And if you wanted to do an endurance race, you definitely could not, push to the limit the whole time and have the car actually make it to the end, even if it's just for the tire wear. Very dynamic feeling. I feel like I can always almost put the car where I want it to, especially if I'm backing off just slightly. I find with GTR2, it's easy to do lap after lap after lap consistently at a good pace, but maybe not pushing outright. Try to negotiate these few corners. No more traffic in front for now. Just a few of those really slow alphas at the back. Poor alphas. A few years too old for this set of cars, maybe. And I mentioned in the intro as well, there's a lot of additional add-ons for Power and Glory. You could really, technically use any GTR2 mod with Power and Glory since it is the same game, but Power and Glory, obviously, different tire physics, different physics methodology overall for the cars. And so I do recommend if you're going to install mods, look for things that are specifically made for Power and Glory. The community I mentioned, the Festbierbude, if I'm pronouncing it right, all the mods on their website are made for Power and Glory, so you can be sure that it'll work well, be compatible. There's some other mods out there. There's a really popular prototype mod, so if you want some more of those 1960s to early 1970s Le Mans prototype cars, you can get those as well. And there's a whole slew of tracks and things, so you could really, if you wanted this to be your one sim, if you love historic sports car racing, I'd guarantee you this could keep you occupied for as long as you're sim racing. Oh, it didn't quite go down the track like I thought it would there, just struggling for grip now. See the CSL still behind me. I'm chasing another one in front. It just went to the inside of a slower car. Light up the rear tires there. Don't really want to do that too much, but it is a lot of fun. Coming down to the final 5 minutes or so. Oh, I got a bump from behind. Mid-corner bump on the apex, trying to push me wide. Almost NASCAR style bump and run. Right, we'll come to the first corner again. Just nipping that curb on the inside, but turning the car nicely. Up to 5th gear. Another Alpha in front. Third gear here. Should be able to keep it in 3rd gear in a fast lap, but struggling for grip now, it seems. Maybe overheated the tires. To check out the setup screen after the race. Now, of course, for Assetto Corsa, there exists the AC Legends mod, which is essentially the same idea as this, and really inspired by it. I think it talks about it in the documentation for that mod. A lot of the same ideas in cars. So if you like this type of car, you don't necessarily have to race in Power and Glory, but this is so well put together. I really cannot recommend it enough. It's not hard to get working for an older sim, and everything is so good. I don't know what else I can say about it. Just having so much fun with this the past week and longer, but really just focusing in on the default content that came with it and just respecting that and how well put together it is. It's a really, really amazing thing. Out of 2nd gear, go into 1st since I'm understeering so much in the final corner. Really racing with this car in my mirror now. I don't think I have a hope of catching the car in front. Should just have a couple minutes left, maybe a couple laps. We won't get a white flag, we'll just get a checkered flag once the time runs out. But it's how it would be. You wouldn't know exactly when the checkered flag's going to come. You just push until the race is over. I love kind of simulating that disorientation that you would have in a racing car, especially in this time with no radios. Using all the track there. This extra curb on the inside, you can sometimes hook that with your right tire. I just missed it there. Or catching a Porsche 914, I think. Interesting car, to say the least. A little bar of soap. I got the CSL right behind me now. Chop him off on the exit of Grand Prix corner. Come up to Opel. Down to third gear. Try to keep the inside line. I don't want him to get a run on me on the inside. Oh, he's got a lot of mid-corner grip. Not able to do it. I'm going to catch this 914 at the worst spot. Coming into Hansen. Maybe could have thrown it up the inside there. I don't know. All right, hill exit. On the right, I'll have to go around the long way here. Able to clear the 914 quite easily, though. The underappreciated Porsche. I think you can find those quite cheap, actually, these days in real life. We'll come through the final corner, though. Able to stay ahead another lap. Could this be the last lap? P4. I'm 7 seconds off the car in front, so no podium hopes today unless there's some sort of accident. Never say never. See a few cars fooling around up there. I got the two now BMWs behind me, collecting them. Try to do my best to run away. Just trying to hit the marks. Do anything too dramatic, just keep it on the track. To fourth gear, pulled out a little bit on the two behind. They seem to catch me quite a bit through the cambered corners. I've got no lateral grip left. Probably tire temperature. Got a couple more 914s in front of me here. Closed up quite a bit behind, but able to get through those two. These two in front are going to be battling with each other. Come down to Hansen, down to second gear. Car wags a bit on the exit. Slide it into the carousel. It's probably what's doing my tires in. The long right-hander. Oh, BMW behind closing up. There's two in front. This will exit. We'll come to the line. We're going to do one more lap. Looks like right up to P4 still. There we go. Got through those two, so that should keep them occupied for a minute. Oh, tense stuff trying to stay in front of the AI. That's what's exciting about it. It's not just a one-way AI. They'll come back and fight you, too. Down to third gear. The Capri has done pretty well. One of my favorite cars to drive in this mod. There's a lot of good ones though, and all of them are consistent quality, so there's really not one car that's worse than the others. It really depends on what you like driving, what you want to drive, what you're interested in, and you can spend all day just reading the histories about the cars and testing them out for a few laps. I've definitely spent some days doing that. Get a sense for what driving them is like. That's what it's all about, and why historic sim racing is a lot of fun. Oh, come through the corners, a little hot there, right to the curb. Just watching that blue BMW in my mirrors. Down to third, down to second. Just getting to the inside of the track there, but actually helps turn the car a bit. All over the curbs. Sliding the car sideways into the carousel. BMW is just so fast mid-corner, down to second gear, come around, final corner, oh, understeering there, no, he gets by me, so we'll come to the line, flag waves, finished, and lost the top 5 right at the end, or that might have been 5th, we'll have to see where I finished, oh man. So if you made it to this point, I think you know my thoughts on Power and Glory. Ended up finishing 5th there, but last corner, last lap, getting past. Always keeps you on your toes. I guess never stop pushing. But this mod is a ton of fun. I wanted to do a general casual review or overview of it because I know I want to do a lot more with it coming up, and wanted to do it justice just in making sure everybody knew what this mod was and that it exists, and that you should probably, if you like classic racing, you should probably do yourself a favor. Get GTR 2 when it's on sale. I think it goes often for $5. You can go download this mod for free, make your own dedicated Power and Glory installation, and have a ton of fun. Let me know if there's any specific cars and tracks, whether they're included or mods, that you'd be interested in me checking out. I'd love to do some more videos on this. I got a couple ideas as well, and also continuing on with my 1966 and beyond seasons. But thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun doing it and can't wait to do some more. So thanks for watching. I'll see you all again next time.